Never stop reading Bible. Have you ever poured your absolute heart and soul into something, only to have people completely twist your intentions? Imagine building a community from scratch, and then, all of a sudden, you're the one on the outside looking in, and your character is on trial. Today we're jumping into exactly that kind of story. One about leadership, betrayal, and a really powerful defense. I mean, what a gut punch, right? And that question, that exact crisis, is right at the heart of the ancient letter we know today as 2 Corinthians. So let's get into it.
All right, so let's paint the picture. It's the middle of the 1st century. The Apostle Paul, a central figure in early Christianity, is writing this incredibly personal letter from a place called Macedonia. And who's he writing to? The church in Corinth, a community that he himself founded. But now, well, their relationship is on the rocks. It's complicated.
So here's our game plan. We're going to start with Paul being under fire, then look at how he defends his plans and pushes for forgiveness. After that, we'll unpack this amazing idea of a living letter and wrap it all up with his ultimate final defense.
Okay, so let's set the stage for this conflict. You've got Paul, who is basically the spiritual father of this church, but now his authority is being completely torn apart by these rival teachers who've worked their way into the community.
And these accusations, they're not just about strategy. They are personal, and they cut deep. They're questioning his integrity, his sincerity, even whether he's a real apostle at all. So this entire letter, it's his response. It's his defense.
So Paul kicks things off by tackling a very specific, practical accusation that was being used to make him look flaky and unreliable.
Yeah, his opponents were basically saying, look at this guy. You can't even trust him to show up when he says he will. So how can you possibly trust him with the big spiritual stuff? It sounds kind of petty, right? But it was a clever way to chip away at everyone's trust in him.
But Paul's defense here is just fascinating. He doesn't make excuses. Instead, he completely reframes it. He says, look, changing my plans wasn't me being unreliable. It was me trying to protect you. It was an act of care.
You see, he explains that his motive was purely love. He knew that if he visited them right then, it would have been tense, maybe even painful for everybody. So by waiting, he was putting their well-being ahead of his own reputation, giving them some breathing room to sort things out.
So after defending his own sincerity, Paul does something really important. He pivots. He shifts the focus away from himself and starts guiding the church on how they should be treating each other, especially one person who had caused a lot of trouble.
Apparently, there was this one person in the community who had done something pretty serious and had faced discipline for it. But now Paul is saying it's time for the next step. It's time for forgiveness and restoration.
And this shows us a core belief of Paul's. Discipline was never about punishment for punishment's sake. The whole point was to lead someone to change their heart so they could be welcomed back into the community with open arms. It's about redemption.
And right in the middle of talking about all this, forgiveness, community, restoration, Paul drops this absolutely beautiful metaphor. He says that believers are the aroma of Christ. It's like their lives give off this spiritual fragrance. To people who are open to it, it smells like life itself. But to those who are opposed, it smells like death.
Just let that sink in for a second. A tangible influence. Our presence, our choices, how we forgive, it all creates a real atmosphere, an aroma that actually affects the people around us.
Okay, so this brings us right to the absolute core of Paul's defense, where he takes on the most serious charge they've thrown out.
It's really a question about credentials, isn't it? I mean, how do you prove you are who you say you are? We think of resumes, degrees, LinkedIn profiles. Well, Paul's opponents were all about that kind of proof.
So these rivals, they roll into Corinth waving around these official-looking letters, basically saying, see, we've got the paperwork to prove we're legit. Where's Paul's? This was a direct shot at the very foundation of his entire ministry.
And Paul's response, it is just breathtaking. He basically says, you want to see my letter of recommendation? Fine. Look in the mirror. You are my letter.
This is such a radical shift in thinking. Paul is arguing that the ultimate credential isn't a piece of paper. It's a changed life. The proof that his ministry was real wasn't in a document, it was in them. The fact that their community even existed, that their lives were transformed, that was the only recommendation he would ever need. They were his living, breathing resume.
And to really drive this point home, Paul makes one final, incredibly powerful comparison. He takes his argument from being just personal and makes it cosmic.
He contrasts the kind of ministry he's a part of with the one his opponents seem to represent.
He talks about his work as part of a new covenant, this new relationship between God and people through Christ. And then he shows how this is just worlds apart and way more glorious than the old covenant that was all about the written law.
And just look at the contrast here. It's so stark. The old was about the letter of the law, written on stone. It led to condemnation, and its glory faded away. But the new is all about the living Spirit. It brings righteousness, and its glory lasts forever. Paul's basically saying, my ministry is part of this amazing everlasting glory. Why on earth would you trade that in for something that's already fading away?
And that really leaves us with something to think about, doesn't it? In our world, a world obsessed with resumes, 5-star reviews, and getting external approval, what is the truest evidence of our impact? Maybe, just like Paul argued, our greatest recommendation isn't something we can print out, but it's the positive, lasting change we help bring about in the lives of other people.
This explainer was brought to you by the Center Studio.